Following the success of Need for Speed Underground 2, in 2005, EA and Black Box released a video game which became the best-selling game of the Need for Speed franchise and is still loved and followed to this date. It gave countless memories to cherish to a generation of gamers and was also the first Need for Speed game launched for the 7th generation of video game consoles. It still has an active fan base, and I find myself returning to this game once every year. Games released by EA prior to Most Wanted in the Need for Speed franchise were quite simple. They followed a basic structure comprising of legal racing, illegal street racing, and exotic cars. This, however, changed with the launch of Underground, which reignited the love for tuners in many car enthusiasts. Underground immaculately reinvented the illegal street racing genre, giving it a well-defined soul. You could now customize your cars both visually and performance-wise. Following these changes and reinventing the trend, EA and Black Box decided to approach their next game very differently. They made some pretty bold changes to the pattern which they had been following since their last two immensely successful games, combining the elements of underground street racing and car customization scene and Hot Pursuit's cop mechanics and daylight settings. EA and Black Box released a video game which ended up selling over 16 million copies worldwide, called Need for Speed Most Wanted. Need for Speed decided to blend together the elements of street racing and daylight and ended up cooking a masterpiece of a game. Unlike the previous two entries which majorly followed the tuner car culture inspired by the movie Fast and Furious 3, Most Wanted reintroduced exotics to the franchise, which fortunately fits into the atmosphere of the game. With the return of the cops, which is hinted by the title, the player sets on a journey to become the most wanted racer of Rockport City. Some of the major changes which happened during the development of the games were the exclusion of drift race, introduction of a new mechanic called the speed breaker, and the introduction of two new types of races known as the speed trap and the toll booth. Pursuit breakers were also introduced. They basically help to immobilize the police cars when in pursuit, giving the players a moment to breathe during the intense chases. Overall, the structure of the game saw a major overhaul when compared to the previous games. It was new, unique, and a fresh take on the franchise. Story has never been the strong suit for the Need for Speed franchise. Unlike the previous games which followed an extremely short and linear story with some random cutscenes thrown in the beginning and at the end, this one had some in the middle in the form of blacklist intros and one random rap sheet cutscene. Nonetheless, the story is simple yet good. We come to Rockport City, challenge a few racers, beat them, beat the best racer and start to build our reputation. Then a guy called Razor, who is at the bottom of the blacklist, challenges us to race him. We do it, but we didn't know about the oil leak which was orchestrated by Razor himself to snatch our car away from us. So he won, but he cheated, so it's technically not a legitimate win. We also make two new friends, one of whom turns out to be a cop at the end and the other who supports us by providing intel about the races. He basically acts as the intermediary between us and the blacklist. So we start from scratch, get a new car, beat the blacklist, and win our car back again. But unbeknownst to us, we also aid our undercover cop friend in getting the blacklist racers arrested. We became pretty much hated by the end of the game. We literally smoked all the racers just to get our car back from Razor. The game ends with us escaping the Rockport City and a dozen cops dying by drowning in water. The cutscenes in this game were goofy. They had a charm of their own and in a weird sort of way. The acting was too generic, like a group of friends hanging out and making a YouTube video. The mix of live action and CGI was really good for the time. Some of the characters and the cringe intros were so unique for the time, which fortunately made them good. As I have previously mentioned, the game saw the introduction of two new races, mechanics, and the total overhaul of the gameplay. Players were now able to refine their driving experience with the help of the speed breaker, which, when activated, slows down the game in real time, giving the players a chance to avoid traffic, make sharp turns, and avoid obstacles. It was a good addition to the franchise. However, after playing Underground 1 and 2 once again, I found myself not using it that often. It was a good mechanic, however, it kind of filled in for the drift races. The races were fairly built. The tracks, to me at least, never felt boring. Sprints were sometimes intense and sometimes a cakewalk. Circuits were unpredictable, Thanks to the rubber banding mechanic, it could easily change the outcome of the race. You could be leading, and in the very next moment, you could fall behind. Knockouts were okay for the most part, you just had to make sure that you stayed on top and maintain a safe lead. Checkpoints could become difficult by the end of the game, with limited and unjustified time bonus. It, however, added to the thrill. Speed traps were new, you just had to maximize your speed as you passed by the point. It, however, also got moderately tough by the end. Last but not the least, drag races. I hated them to oblivion. These just felt discouraging and frustrating. It was based on the trial and error method rather than your own skills. The next major change was the police. The AI was very well developed when compared to Hot Pursuit 2. The police chases always felt intense, and it also had a substantial amount of weight coupled with some serious tension. The chases on higher heat levels were really extreme sometimes. 20 cars behind you with some roadblocks and spike strips thrown in the middle, it made the chases fun and exciting. It also gave the players a sense of being rewarded after evading the police. Certain milestone challenges can be completed during the pursuit, which helps us in getting a call from Rock to tell us about our upcoming race with the blacklist. The police, however, can be annoying too. Suppose you get arrested after reaching heat level 4 or 5 and you unfortunately don't have a marker on you. The heat level resets, and climbing those levels once again with your super fast cars just sucks the fun out of it. It often results in the lower heat cars getting into accidents or getting overtaken by us. Sometimes the AI literally kills itself or gets lost in the traffic. Another super annoying aspect of the game is rubber banding. Suppose you have maintained a 1 km lead and you're about to finish the race, but all of a sudden you hit a car or you run into a corner. You check your GPS and you see your opponent on your tail. It just makes you want to restart the race. Rubber banding in this game is absolutely evil and disrespectful. I have mixed reviews for the blacklist races. The races sometimes felt extremely easy and sometimes they felt unjustified. For the most part, they were easy though. The blacklist felt too long. It could have been 10 instead of 15. It would have made the game much more simpler and easier. It still is good though. I don't have much problem with it. Everything else was absolutely fine. It made the game arcadey and fun just like it should be. The customization in this game was a huge step down. We had lesser options for almost everything. Bumpers, side skirts, muffler tips were straight up deleted and body kits were very limited. It was the same scheme for every car, leaving us with a limited option to customize our rides. A major portion of Underground 2 was customizing your car, increasing your ratings and getting published on a magazine's front cover. It made you want to customize your car. This game, however, mostly discourages it. For some, it could impact the replayability of the game, for some it could not. No one wants to do the same thing over and over again. The combinations were very limited. This, however, got fixed in Need for Speed Carbon, which had a much more range when compared to Need for Speed Most Wanted. The soundtrack of the game is a high-octane mix that perfectly complements the game's intense street racing atmosphere and the police chases. It features a diverse array of genres including rock, hip-hop. The soundtrack includes tracks from artists like Avenged Sevenfold, The Prodigy, Bullet for My Valentine, and Styles of Beyond. Each song is carefully selected to enhance the adrenaline-pumping experience, making every chase and race feel more exhilarating. The music not only sets the tone for the game but also immerses the players in the underground racing culture, adding an extra layer of excitement to the gameplay. The game has aged like a fine wine. It still is fun for the most part. What I dislike about the modern racing games is very subjective and you may find it controversial. You are free to disagree with me, but I hate the realism in most modern racing games. The driving and the damage feels a bit too much realistic. Maybe it isn't for me anymore. Most Wanted basically redefined the genre. It was innovative and unique for the time. I see myself revisiting this game every year for a reason. The arcade-styled gameplay isn't there in the newer games. Every racing game nowadays feels like a copy of each other. Most Wanted for me shall remain one of the best racing games out there. Thank you for watching. Hope you liked the video. Be sure to hit the like button and the subscribe button and stay tuned for more videos.